In this lecture, I want to talk to you about tautologies, inconsistencies, and contingencies. So first, let's start with some definitions. We'll say that a formula is a tautology if it is true under all possible conditions. We'll say that a formula is an inconsistency if it is false under all possible conditions. And if a formula is true under some conditions but false under others, then we'll say it is a contingency. So let's begin by looking at an example of a tautology. So here is the formula P or not P. This should look familiar to you. It is one of the theorems of our system. Something that we proved is a theorem of our system. It is the law of the excluded middle. And like all of the theorems of our system, it turns out to be a tautology. And we can see that it is a tautology by examining its truth table. So here is the truth table for P or not P. You can see that this formula is true on every row of the truth table. That is, it is true under all possible conditions. This indicates that it is a tautology. Okay, now that we've seen an example of a tautology, let's look at an example of an inconsistency. One way to find an example of an inconsistency is to take a tautology and put a negation sign in front of it. So since P or not P is a tautology, we get an example of an inconsistency if we take the negation of P or not P. It's actually pretty apparent why it's the case that putting the negation sign in front of a tautology gives you an inconsistency. What negation signs do is they flip truth values. Since a tautology is true under all possible conditions, the negation of a tautology is false under all possible conditions. So the negation of a tautology always turns out to be an inconsistency, and vice versa. The negation of an inconsistency will always turn out to be a tautology. So we can see that the negation of P or not P is an inconsistency if we examine its truth table. We see that this formula is in fact false on every row of the truth table, and that tells us that it is an inconsistency. Okay, now let's look at an example of a contingency. So here's the formula P or not P. Here's the formula if P, then not P. Here is the truth table for that formula. As you can see, this formula is false on the first row of the truth table, but true on the bottom row of the truth table. So this formula is false under some conditions and true under others. That means it's an example of a contingency. So what we see here is how to use truth tables to discover whether formulas are examples of tautologies, inconsistencies, or contingencies. If you write out the truth table for a formula and it's true on every row, it is a tautology. If you write out the truth table for a formula and it is false on every row, it is an inconsistency. And if you write it out and it's true on some rows but false on others, it is a contingency. So I'm going to go ahead now and give you a few exercises that will allow you to practice using truth tables to identify tautologies, inconsistencies, and contingencies. After you complete that exercise, I will see you for the next lecture.